Chapter 8 of Sweet Smooth Lou Gianetti, as his friends called him. Understanding Movies Textbook, Chapter 8 Story. Welcome, and here we go. Aristotle, among other things in his life, talked about the difference in the poetics between showing and telling. Some of your English teachers maybe talk about imagery, right? It is written in ways, poetry often, perhaps, you almost feel like you are there. Cinema allows to show and to tell at the exact same time, which is a pretty major difference between literature. The ability to actually paint the picture is provided in film. Narratology, defined on page 368, study of how stories work, how we make sense of the raw materials, and how we fit them together to form a coherent whole. The question then becomes, and we'll get into this on the next slide, how do the writers and producers communicate with message receivers? One way is some assistance with narratology. Voiceovers are a good example. Definitely maybe one of my favorites. It's a really cute story about a single dad, Ryan Reynolds. Ladies, you're welcome. Guys into Ryan Reynolds, you're also welcome. Check it out. It highly, highly recommend. It will not let you down. But there are some voiceovers used in this to the point that he is telling a story of his past to his wonderful, cute little daughter. I believe Isla Fisher is a love interest in this film, but also voiceovers in Gone Girl. Certainly a different genre, a little bit different direction there. But it's all about perspective. Classical narratives versus formalist narratives. Classical narratives include a storyteller of some kind. Formalist narratives are overly manipulated to force an opinion on the audience. Not as much choice regarding interpretation there. Story and plot, here's Olaf for you. They are not the same. The plot combines the story with the intended structures and aesthetics, the fancy stuff that helps the movie be more entertaining. That is kind of my paraphrasal there for you. But the plot, page 371, involves storyteller's method of superimposing a structural pattern over the story. So you are the spectator, and we are going to get into specific genres later this week. Here's Neo, because he's kind of like a computer. When we experience cinematic adventures, film, we process things very, very, very quickly. This is me snapping. That being said, we certainly take specific expectations to, say, a cinema, if and when COVID allows us to return. When I go to watch The Avengers, my anticipation is very specific. I know what I'm going to see, and it's certainly different than if I'm going with my wife to watch a chick flick or a horror movie. Don't often watch those in theaters. But we bring specific expectations based on genre to each cinematic adventure that we choose to experience, whether that be in our homes or, when COVID allows, at movie theaters. We anticipate specific things, and we want every film to live up to those high expectations. Importance of genre and expectations. Touched on this already. Suspenseful films. We're good with guessing. Who the heck did it? Contrast, we generally know the outcome in a romantic comedy. The question really that remains is how are the guy and the gal going to work it out in the end when she's not even into him in the beginning? And then tone, along similar lines here, I guess, with genre, oftentimes is established before the film even begins. Think about this when you, kind of the introductory movie music to the film. Here's Seven. Again, highly recommend. Rated R, but it's one that you need to see if you consider yourself any sort of a movie or film buff. It is absolutely fantastic. A younger Morgan Freeman, and then we have Kevin Spacey and Brad Pitt pictures here. But need to see it. It's a great one. Tone. How is that established in specific movies? And also, you can think that is going to relate to specific genres as well. We have those expectations. The game we play, we are never passive. We're kicked back in our couch or on our lazy boy or wherever we might be in an uncomfortable school seat, I guess. We are forced to sift between irrelevant information and crucial details. So, example, we watch The Prestige in class. If we are truly experiencing a film, we don't just sit there, do we? Because we are always kind of guessing. We're always trying to piece things together. We are wishing for certain outcomes. Oh my goodness, he had a twin brother the entire time, right? Like we are actively engaged in this process. Classical paradigm, 376 to 380. Begins with a question. So here is Remember the Titans. And we have Denzel Washington's character. I believe his name is Coach Boone. He wants to unite not only his football team, but the community. He wants to remove this racism, and he wants to accomplish a specific team goal of winning a state championship in a racist, I believe, Virginia community. But it begins with a question. What does he or she want? How will he or she get there? Classical paradigm, 376 to 380. Endings are generally predictable. So as we watch Remember the Titans, we are fairly hopeful, at least, that they will unite, that they will win. They will come together despite their differences. A wedding or a dance, a death or reunion or return to the norm. And there are, again, sport films where the protagonist or the team does not win, but in most cases, they kind of win by not winning, right? 377, the final shot is often meant to be a philosophical overview of some kind. Here we have white and black coach coming together, holding up the game ball at that state championship. But it begins with a question, classical paradigm. What does he or she want? Realistic narratives attempt to portray the real world. Often rites of passage. We'll talk more about this later in the week. Namely birth, first love, puberty, first job, marriage, divorce, or death. Things the audience can relate. Hopefully, probably not death, because it's difficult to watch cinematic adventures or movies or films while dead. Realistic narrative. Focus on some of those rites of passage. Also stress an author who reports rather than making judgments. A rejection of cliches. A fondness for shocking subject matter. Rejecting ridiculous, undeserved optimism. Example here, Shawshank Redemption prison film. Not a whole lot of reason to be optimistic. An avoidance of extreme exaggeration. A rejecting of destiny and fate. And straightforward presentation. Formalist narratives are the opposite. They love all that unrealistic and fancy stuff. If you believe it, you can do it. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance. Do your dance. Get the Space Jam sci-fi mini Disney films. Non-fictional narratives. This is Jasmine. Random trivia about young Mr. McClung. Big fan of Jasmine as a kid. I don't know what it was. Maybe the bedazzle in the hair did it for me. But I digress here. Fiction. Linear structures. Documentaries. Avant-garde. Just facts, people. Non-fiction, non-fictional narratives. Also kind of help us remember the past, right? Genre films. Here's Gangster Squad. Highly recommend. Got Ryan Gosling here. Emma Stone. Big fan of Emma Stone. You know, again, maybe I have a thing for redheads, and I'm just not entirely sure of it yet. I think I've talked to some of you about this. But coming-of-age films. There are mother films, 395, focus on domestic life. Men, in which case, are breadwinners. Or the side piece, if you will. Genre films. We'll get back to genre later in the week. Again, we bring in specific expectations based on the genre we are going to view. War, gangster, sci-fi. We expect certain things. We do not want to be let down. Action adventures, for instance, focus on male activities, whereas women are romantic interests. Proposal, another good one. Here we have another reference to Ryan Reynolds. I don't know what the deal is today, but that's where I went. 4 cycles of genre movies. So we kind of go from most loyal to totally satirical. Primitive establishes the conventions of the genre. Classical establishes the values of that genre. Revisionist becomes symbolic, less certain on values. And then parodic, obviously, is an outright mockery of its conventions. I believe in the reading for today, Spy Who Shagged Me is referenced as it is a parody, is meant to be not taken seriously as opposed to a James Bond spy film. There you go. Questions to consider when analyzing a film structure. Who's telling the story and why? What do we as spectators supply to the story? What information do we provide to fill in gaps? How is time presented? Does the film say something about its time period? Talk about time period pieces later in the semester. And then lastly, does the narrative embrace mythical concepts or basic human traits? I've shown this film in the past, and we are not going to do this necessarily this week, but I referenced a couple films, specifically 7, that you should watch before you die. Another one that many of you have probably seen. I hope a majority of you have seen. But a man by the name of William Goldman wrote a story called The Princess Bride in 1973. And it is absolutely one of the most wonderful films. It's a great narratology. There's a grandfather telling a story that we get to watch. Aristotle would be proud as we view The Princess Bride. But truly, if you get a chance to watch The Princess Bride, people, not just because it's an excellent example of showing and telling, but because it's just awesome, give it a view. So, hey, good luck on your quiz today. I'm going to pop that in for you on Canvas here just momentarily. And we will talk Wednesday. We're going to move on with a genre study. So, deuces for me as well as Aristotle there. He believes in you. Just remember that and take that to the bank. We'll see you later, folks.